Well, good morning from Southern California, from the desert outside Palm Springs. My name's Michael Benner, and this is the Wisdom of the Soul. Appreciate you joining us live whenever you can, 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. Otherwise, we're available in its entirety as a video on YouTube. Just search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Also, a edited version is available as an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I want to mention that we had one person leave our Saturday group, which opens up a seat. We're limited to 10 in that group. It's an intensive. It's sort of an advanced class also. And so if you're interested, you can learn more about it on my website, michaelbenner.com. Just click on, I think it says personal development or classes and training or some such thing. And you can read about it. Again, it's called the Salon, the Studio Salon or the Wisdom Salon, limited to 10. It's a Zoom class. And it's Saturdays at 11. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email. You'll find the email address on that website, but I'll give it to you here. I have several, but for the class AW Mystery School at gmail.com, AW for Ageless Wisdom, just AW Mystery School at gmail.com. if you're interested in joining the Saturday class. Today, I think this is class number 80, and it occurred to me that after more than a year and a half, I've yet to do a class about the topic of my book, which I published about 5 years ago called Fearless Intelligence. So that's our topic, Fearless Intelligence. What in the world is fearless intelligence? I have always intended it to be a kind of a bridge, a transition from emotional intelligence to what we might call spiritual intelligence or awareness. As I mentioned in this week's newsletter, we all know about mental intelligence because our parents sent us to school. And the government made sure there were free public schools. And it was a time when everybody was in favor of that and recognized that public education was for the greater good of all. So you paid for public school in your property taxes, even if you didn't have children, because you benefited from a well-educated society. Not everybody agrees with that anymore, but I think most enlightened and well-educated people do. And my point is simply that we learned about mental intelligence, but nobody taught us about emotional intelligence. In fact, it wasn't until the mid-1990s that the first books about emotional intelligence became available based on research that really began in the 80s. There was just very little interest in psychology before the 1980s in the nature of emotions. Most people, I think, considered emotions to be mostly negative. There are positive emotions, of course, happiness and joy and contentment and peace of mind. But the so-called negative emotions are the ones that hurt. And I think generally they were just seen as a phenomena of mind, of our existence, that interfered with clear thinking. So the idea of emotions being a form of intelligence is a little counterintuitive if you consider that times that we get emotionally worked up with these negative emotions, this heartache, this upset, anger, frustration, whatever the hurtful feeling, irritation, frustration, humiliation. When that tends to happen, our ability to be reasonable and lucid in our thinking, much less creative. Just goes right out the window. So what do you mean emotional intelligence? When I get emotional, my intelligence becomes less available. And yet there is such a thing, and we're going to talk about it today. I want to do an opening meditation in just a few minutes. And yet going into that, let me talk just a little about the nature of emotions. There are really 4 basic emotions. Some systems say 6. And this is from clinical psychology, sort of the basic understanding of emotion. Not everybody agrees with the model, but the basic model of 4 emotions, 4 core fundamental emotions, is happiness and sadness, anger and fear. That's your baseline. Happiness, sadness, anger, and fear. Now, I'm quick to point out that fear is an element of the anger and the sadness. And so we could really break it down to happiness and fear, or more commonly it's described as love and fear. Now, the love is real. It's the light. Fear is the shadow. It's devoid of substance. Fear is about, as we'll discuss today in depth, what we do not know, what we do not understand. You know, hey, Michael, what are you afraid of? I don't know. I can't figure it out. Well, why are you so stressed, so anxious? I don't know. Well, that's the point. That's what fear is. It has nothing at all to do with danger. And sometimes a clinician will, a psychologist, a psychiatrist will say, no, there's a difference between fear and anxiety. That anxiety is what you're talking about. What do you say? Uncertainty, or things that are confusing, or unawareness, or ignorance, for example. But fear is a response to danger, real or imagined, but some sort of threat or hazard. Okay, but to me it's all fear. And I'll tell you why. The reason I say it's all fear, whether we call it anxiety or stress or tension or pressure or worry or doubt, or, it could run the gamut from panic and horror to nervousness and mild apprehension, or, well, I'm not afraid, I have my concerns. Oh, come on. A little or a lot, it's all fear. And all fear, whatever its name, is what we don't know. Even if danger is present and clear, some real threat, the fear is a function of what you don't know about the danger. And we can prove that by looking at times where we learn about danger, we understand it better, and the danger may remain constant, but the fear diminishes. This is why we did fire drills as little kids in school, or in California, earthquake drills, or duck and cover, nuclear war drills. Not so funny, but makes me laugh, as if we could survive such a thing. The Boy Scouts, be prepared. That's what that's all about. The more you know about the thing that frightens you, listen to this carefully. The more you know about whatever it is that frightens you, the less fear there is. Fear, by any name, is extremely debilitating. It not only debilitates your body's immune system and leads to so-called dis-ease. That's why we call illness disease. It's good health and well-being comes from being at ease. So illness is dis-ease. There's stress-related component, a fear-based component in illness. It's not the whole story, of course. There's bacteria and viruses and mutagens and carcinogens and genetic proclivities, and there's certainly many, many other diet, so many other factors, but fear plays a very important role in healing or illness, depending on which side of the coin you look at. It also shatters and scatters awareness. Fear, anxiety, stress, can't concentrate. It's hard to focus your attention, to even know what to do, to get your feet on the ground. Fear just says run, turn and run, right? FEAR, forget everything and run. You probably have also heard the acronym false evidence appearing real, which is more the truth of fear. It's a shadow. It can be scary. We're coming up on Halloween, shadows, and, why is a shadow scary? Why is the dark alley scary? Because you can't see, because you don't know what's in there. What's the solution? Turn on the light. Oh, I see. There's nothing scary in there at all. So you can see how we conflate the idea that fear is about danger with not knowing. And the more you know about a particular danger, the less frightening it is. People who study snakes, for poisonous snakes, for example, that snake is just as dangerous to them as to anyone else. Poisonous snake is a poisonous snake, but they have less fear of it because they understand its behavior. They watch it. They know how to handle it. If they're going to grab it, they're going to grab it right behind the head, not by the tail. And so there's less fear. That's true of everything else. Could be the fear of flying, the fear of relationships, the fear of failure, the fear of success. Fear of success is every bit as frightening as the fear of failure. So, as we've said before, we get stuck in this. Fear, anxiety, stress, we get stuck. We're really holding on. Well, if fear is a shadow cast by the light is love, which very important that we understand is not an emotion. It's not really an emotion. It trickles down into the emotional nature, so there are emotional qualities of love, like happiness or joy or peace or contentment. But love itself is consciousness. It's the fact that you're aware, that you're sentient, that you're responsive, that you're alert. That's what capital L love is. Spiritual love, so-called agape, is awareness and the understanding that there's only one of us here. Of the many definitions of love, I think my favorite is the absence of otherness. And think about times that you love. You feel separation falling away, don't you? That loneliness goes away because you're not alone. But beyond that, just a walk in the woods will do it. You just begin to feel a connection to the earth and the trees and the birds and the sky, and you don't feel that alienation, that isolation, that aloneness. I did a class a few months ago here on loneliness and suggesting it's really not what it seems, for we could be lonely in a group of people, in a crowd of people, in a big family with lots of friends. You can still nevertheless feel alone. Seems to be a component of sadness and depression. So love is real. Fear is an illusion. It's just love is understanding. Doesn't that flow, love and understanding? And then fear is ignorance. Oh, I get it. How does love drive out fear? The same way understanding drives out ignorance. It's an aha. The light comes and you see. That's what love is. It's conscious awareness. Oh, I see. There's nothing to fear here. That's the journey. And then out of that, again, trickling down into these basic emotions, there is the happiness that is a quality of love, and then sadness, anger, fear itself. And some models say there are 6 basic emotions, and they would include surprise, which is very closely related to fear. Somebody surprises you and you jump, and you probably will say, "Oh, you scared me," when in fact they just surprised you. So those are very closely allied. And disgust. In fact, if you look at it, you'll see that all of these so-called negative feelings, I always hesitate to, you've probably heard me say this, to refer to hurtful feelings as negative because they're actually so rich and so valuable. And if they're valuable, why would you call them negative? We call them negative because they hurt. And we don't want to hurt, right? So again, if all of our hurtful feelings are supported by fear, and fear is what we don't understand, then the way to heal all of our heartache and all of our emotional pain is to understand it. And how is this different from physical pain? It should be obvious. If physical pain is a symptom of your condition and replete with clues or cues that reveal what's wrong, and what about this condition needs to be corrected or brought into balance, then why would that not also be true about emotional pain? That they're symptoms, you see. But we're much more likely to accept responsibility for our physical pain. We know it's our pain. We have a problem accepting responsibility for our emotional pain. We play victim, and we think our emotional pain is done to us by outside forces. And so we obsess on the individual or the group that hurt us, or the event or the circumstance or condition that's causing this emotional anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, humiliation, whatever. And as long as we obsess on the stimulus, we're going to ignore our opportunity to choose a response. Fearless intelligence is a stage where you understand this whole process. And it doesn't mean that you are never frightened or stressed or anxious or afraid. It just means that you know what to do with it, which is face it, embrace it, discern its meaning and significance, and phew, it goes away. It falls away, right? Just like the symptoms of disease fall away as you get healthy again, right? You get a common cold, you're sick for a few days, and as the body heals itself, all those symptoms, the runny nose, the watery eyes, the sneezing, the cough, falls away. Same thing with all of our heartache, all of our frustration, all of our pain. Once we stop struggling against the world that is doing this to us, turn within and recognize responsibility as the ability to choose our perspective and our response. Right? More on fearless intelligence in a minute. Let's do an opening meditation, okay? Close your eyes and relax. Get comfortable in your chairs or your meditation pillow or bench or cross-legged on the bed, wherever you happen to be. And as you close your eyes, center yourself balance yourself, and take 3 or 4 nice, slow, deep breaths, inhaling through the nose, ideally. Pause as you peak, and as you exhale just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, feel a letting go feeling. Do this a few more times, pulling in strength and power as you inhale, and as you exhale, feel the letting go. Muscles relaxing and unwinding, you can feel it. Feels like you're dropping, releasing your muscular tension. Letting go of your resistance or the tendency to hold on or fight back. Our resistance to reality is the core of the problem. It's not what's being done to us, it's our resistance to it that creates the problem. And then you begin to breathe normally, but you continue the letting go. Softening like butter left out of the refrigerator on the counter. It doesn't change its appearance or its form, yet it softens and yields to the warmth of the room. Feel that softening. Or think of times that you were able to float on your back in fresh water, and how you had to really develop the ability to let go of muscular tension on a really deep level if you were going to allow the water to support you. Being supported by water as a result of letting go is a really nice allegory. For water in many systems symbolizes the emotional nature. When the surface of water is disturbed, if it's a windy day and the surface of the lake or the pond is a little choppy, it becomes increasingly difficult to see down into the water or to see what is reflected on the surface. But like emotions, as the water becomes calm and its surface smooth as glass, you're able to see deeply into the depths of the water. And with no effort whatsoever, shift your focus just as easily to what's reflected on the surface, that which stands above you. This ability to see into your emotions requires that we release our anxieties and our fears and come to a calm and peaceful place so that we can see deeply into our emotional feelings. Think of someone or something that you love very much. could be a spouse, a partner, a family member, one of your own children. Could be a pet, maybe even an activity like walking in the woods, or paddling a canoe or kayak. Any activity, any animal, any person, any relationship where there is love. And allow one in particular to come to mind. Choose the one that stands above the rest. Your first impression. And ask yourself, where in your body do you feel that love? Where is that love centered as an emotional feeling in your body? Not unlike physical pleasure. Physical feelings and emotional feelings are both felt in the body. Find where you feel that love. Maybe it's everywhere, but it probably has a center. And notice how, if you brought any worry or concern about that relationship to bear, it would impede that feeling, diminish it somewhat. As you begin to worry about the stability of that love, the certainty of that love, the everlasting nature of that love. Any concern, the slightest concern, diminishes the feeling and creates a, see if you can feel it, a sense of separation or slowly backing away, a kind of a resistance to that joy, that happiness. On the other hand, if you abandon that worry, if you drop it, if you let go and relax, if you trust life and trust yourself, the love amplifies. And you feel a merging, a coming together. Often we think of love in this way as akin to magnetism, where opposite poles attract. Maybe you remember playing with bar magnets and iron filings in school. And like poles repel. So the idea of love being magnetic, only the polarities are reversed. Where love attracts love, and fear attracts more fear. Fear repels love and pushes it away. Feel that magnetism, that attraction, as if magnetic, that repulsion, as if magnetic. So love is a matter of allowing, of letting go, of finding that peace and tranquility, permitting yourself to feel loved, loving, and lovable, to give and receive, to receive that which you give, to initiate by giving and opening yourself to the receiving of that simple joy, that silly little grin on your face, the lightness that you feel when you allow yourself to feel loved and loving and lovable. And now let's go one step beyond the model of magnetism and consider love as the absence of otherness. If there is something other than love, love is diminished by virtue of this sense of separation. And so to believe we are separate beings in meat bodies, in a world of objects and separated forms, it's easy to believe we need to reach out and clutch and grab and hold on to love. And so part of love is the fear of losing love. You can feel that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Some people refuse to love for fear that when it's lost, they'll be devastated. So they just don't allow themselves to love fully in the first place. I remember when my first dog, as an adult, the first dog I got 11 or 12 years later died of age, and I was devastated. I thought long and hard about whether I wanted to go through that again. And in my mind, I looked at a kind of a balance beam and put the love of having another dog on one side of the scale and the devastation of knowing in 10 or 12 years I'd lose that animal, putting that on the other end, and created a kind of a, which outweighs the other. And many people decide that the devastation of heartbreak, that pain is too much, so they'll just not love. And it goes beyond pets to relationships. Even if it's a committed relationship, like you're talking about your children or your parents, your extended family, or your spouse, you may be married in a committed relationship, withholding love as if it's some kind of effective strategy for avoiding hurt. Consider whether that's wise. And whether instead it might make more sense to love unconditionally, fully and completely, come what may. And if your heart is broken, if it feels at some point like you are losing or you have lost that love, consider that the only thing you've lost is the object of your love. But if we have lost a loved one, not only separation, divorce, getting kicked to the curb, that kind of thing, but let's say someone we love dies. Notice that your love for that object, that person, that animal, whatever, didn't diminish. It probably grew. In the absence of the object of your love, the love actually grew. And it's heartbreaking to lose the objects of our love. And there's heartbreak involved in maintaining the relationship, but the love itself is never diminished. And that feeling that we call love, the emotional quality and nature of awareness itself, is the recognition that there is no other. There's only one of us here. And you know that when you love. You feel that when you give your love away. Without condition. Unconditional love is not just feeling the fullness of love, it's the willingness to feel everything. Because everything that is not love, anything that hurts us emotionally, is merely a symptom, a clue that there's something about ourselves that we don't understand. And when we turn within and understand it, all that heartache, all that upset, all that emotional suffering vaporizes, and we become fearless. And we learn that the best parts of us are hidden where we're most afraid to look. And so we go looking for fear. And you don't have to look very far because it's everywhere, it's all around us. Just turn and face it, confront it, recognize it for what you don't understand. Know that it comes in the form of emotional hurt, heartache, and pain and suffering. But it's just a shadow concealing a treasure, a gift. The treasure you seek is hidden in the cave you least wish to enter. This is what it means to be a spiritual warrior. Love is facing fear and knowing it is an illusion. It represents only what we are not aware of. Become aware of it, and all the fear and all the heartache vaporizes. You become fearless. You become that which you truly are. Love. You are the love that you've been looking for all this time. Not only do you have the love you're looking for, you are that love. That's what and who you are. The absence of otherness. Honor the presence of that feeling in your body. wonder that we have this capacity beyond logic, beyond mentality, beyond cognition and ideation. We have the capacity to care and to love, to choose to be kind, generous, tolerant, patient, gentle. This is wisdom. And because love is everywhere, you don't need to carry it any more than a fish needs to worry about whether its destination will be wet. Love is everywhere. So put everything down, because everything you carry is not love. Put it all down and be free. Love is the air, it's the oxygen, it's the light. So recognize that you can be this love, emanate and radiate this sense of wholeness, this fulfillment as you reorient yourself toward the waking state. Feel the chair supporting you, the furniture you're sitting on supporting you. Turn your attention to the room. Remember the room in which you sit in the Zoom class you're participating in. Take a slow, deep breath, inhaling. Hold for just a beat, and as you exhale slowly, open your eyes now, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, rested, refreshed, better than before. Eyes open now, back in the room. And maybe another deep breath and a stretch. I like to make sure I'm back in my body. Tap my feet on the floor a little bit. Good. I hope you enjoyed that. So that's the love side of things. Now, I've got to tell you that for whatever reason, maybe it's just me and my DNA, more than likely it has to do with the way I was raised and parented, the values that I was taught on one hand and that I saw demonstrated on the other hand, very different, lots of conflict. Do what I say, not what I do, that kind of stuff. But I've always had a lot of fear as a boy, as a child, enormous amounts of fear, and was never allowed to express it. I'm sure you can relate to this. It's pretty exceptional parenting where children are allowed to be afraid or express any of the hurtful feelings that's supported by fear. What child is allowed to be angry? You see, that gets shut down. You have no right to be angry. Because the child's going to be angry at who? A sibling or a parent, right? So that's not going to be tolerated. You can't be angry at me. And so what does anger trigger? Anger. And defensiveness, which is perceived by the opponent as offensive. This is an important understanding. That when you're attacked by an angry person, even if only verbally, and you defend yourself, that is perceived as an attack. You see? To the point that when the argument is over, well, you started it. No, I didn't start it. You started it. And both would, swear to the heavens that the other one started it. Well, it's true. When we become defensive, it's a good idea to learn to say to yourself, wait a minute, what part of me am I defending? Who am I defending? Why am I defending myself? What makes me think I need a defense? Much less, how about this? I can't let them get away with that. I'm not going to let them get away. I'm going to set them straight. They need to learn a thing or two, and I'm going to teach them. So it goes beyond defense. But that's what emotions do. Negative emotions, so-called negative emotions, hurtful emotions trigger hurtful emotions. And so I'm sure you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. Why do hurt people hurt people? Well, often they don't know they're hurting people as a result of being hurt, but often as not, it could be deliberate. I'm going to hurt you so that you know how you've hurt me. Do you see? Do you feel the separation? The object here who is not the object there. I'm hurting, and it couldn't possibly be the result of you being hurt because you're attacking me and you hurt me, so now I'm going to hurt you, and it spirals up. What are you defending, and why? I mean, let's just look beyond the need to set somebody straight or teach them a lesson or make sure they don't get away with it. Let's just put that down as an extension of defensiveness and say, what are we defending in the first place? Who are we defending? Is it possible that if you really knew the truth of who you are as love incarnate, as a child of the universe, that you wouldn't need a defense and you wouldn't have to defend yourself? That you could be so fearless, our topic today, fearless intelligence. Forgive the plug for my book, Fearless Intelligence, available wherever fine books are sold. Could we be that fearless that we don't need to defend ourselves? Now you're bulletproof. Who's going to hurt you if you can't be hurt? If someone says, well, you're stupid, and that hurts, it's because you think maybe they have a point. You'll deny it. You'll defend yourself. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. You're stupid for thinking I'm stupid. But if you really knew that you're not stupid, you may not be a genius, you're no Einstein, but come on, you're a pretty bright person. If you knew that, if you really, really knew that, how could that allegation, yeah, you're a moron, you're an idiot, you're stupid, how could that hurt? How could the bully hurt you? If you knew the truth of who you were, you could just laugh at him and even have compassion for the fact that the bully is the one that's hurting. The egomaniac, the person that walks with a swagger and thinks he's really cool and all of that, and wow, he must think he's really cool and big and powerful. No, actually, the bigger the ego, the more evidence you have that the person has no idea who they are. Have some compassion for the maniacal egomaniac and the narcissist. They suffer horribly. To have to put up that kind of a front about always being right, and if only everybody did what I know to be the right thing to do, the world would work, because I understand it. The narcissist in the marching band can be the only one out of step, but he knows or she knows that it's everybody else that's out of step. The narcissist is always right. That doesn't come from confidence, quite the opposite. See, the confident person is humble and needs no defense and becomes absolutely bulletproof. That's fearless intelligence. But it's more than a decision. You can't just decide, I'm going to be fearless. If it were that easy, then perhaps it would be more common. It's a process of wading through. You gotta clean up your mess. You gotta go back and revisit the false assumptions that we've made about ourselves, usually in childhood. It takes some inner child work. It takes remembering what happened in childhood that caused you to doubt yourself. And the inability to discover the truth of who you are because you couldn't express yourself. Again, who is allowed to say that they're afraid, to admit that they're afraid, or more to the point, to feel any of the hurtful feelings like anger that are supported by fear? Or envious, or whatever you're feeling. Parents will come to me for counseling and say, I talk and talk and talk until I'm blue in the face, and they just don't listen to me. And at that point, that's my cue to say, do you listen to them? See? It's scary. Parents don't want to listen to their kids say, I'm angry at you, I hate you. They don't want to hear that, but if that's the way the kid feels, he ought to be able to express himself. I love you, but I hate you. I love you, but I'm really angry. And with a little understanding, this directional nature, this is curious too, this directional nature of anger and hatred. Like, these feelings are different in that they're directed at the object. I'm angry at you. I'm angry because of you. I hate you. Other feelings aren't like that. I'm sad at you. It doesn't make sense. I'm depressed because of you. Well, that's maybe you could make that stretch, but see how it's much easier to own the sadness or the depression than feelings like anger and hatred, which are very directional. So who wants to hear that stuff? Who's got the courage to sit and listen to a child unload on them so it gets repressed? And the kid takes the blame, the kid takes the heat. Tell a child they're bad, they don't go to the room and go, well, I know I'm loved because I'm fed and clothed and housed, and I am of them, and they decided to bring me in the world. I must be loved. They just mean my behavior is bad. No child does that. They're told they're bad. They go to the room and feel, I'm bad. I'm rotten. I'm broken. I'm inadequate. And we carry that because the brain is still growing until we're 20 or 21 years old. That's wiring. That's permanently wired into your brain. So now you're 30 years old or 40 years old or 50 years old, and somebody brings up those fears of inadequacy because of the way they talk to you or treat you or the circumstance you find yourself in, do you realize that the feeling is really that old, that it comes from childhood? I mean, there's a reason the psychiatrist strokes his goatee and says, well, tell me about your childhood. That's where this stuff is formed. Not all of it, but most of it. The false assumptions, the traumas. That's when you feel most alone, most alienated, most likely to experience depersonalization. It's so terrifying that you just leave your body sometimes. All the fears. I used to be afraid of mirrors, big animals, all kinds of things I was afraid of. And more to the point, as a result, I developed my mentality. I did everything that I could to read and think and be logical and develop my ability to analyze and to reason, to be deductive, empirical, uh, to verify, to incorporate credibility, to give attribution. I think it led a lot to my career in journalism, was I was looking for the truth. And I was 10 or 15 years into being a journalist when I realized this is not the truth I was looking for. This government and politics and no, this is. And so I got deeper and deeper into psychology, and even that was not what I was looking for. Although I love psychology and I've learned a lot about myself from it. And so inevitably you find philosophy. And philosophy is the search for truth. That's what philosophy is. Only it's the capital T truth. It's the search for absolutes. And then having to acknowledge that in reality, while there are absolutes, there are also relative truths. This is called the two-truth doctrine, and an understanding of it can settle a lot of arguments and resolve a lot of the emotional angst, confusion, and unknown. Remember, that's what anxiety and fear by any name is. It's just what you don't know. And it comes in two forms. What you don't know about the world, that's called situational awareness or unawareness. But at the core, much more importantly and more fundamental, is what you don't know about yourself, self-awareness or self-unawareness. So the cornerstone of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. That creates the fearlessness you need to address fear directly, unmask it, discern its meaning. The heartache goes away, you become fearless, and that leads to a spiritual understanding of self as love, the absence of otherness. You are the one life. You are the source. A teacher of mine, Rupert Spira, says, God is a religious word for happiness, for joy, for love, for awareness, consciousness. God is a religious word for being consciously aware. God is love. religion says God loves you. Now it's creating a separation. From way out there, God loves you. Imagine he's so far away, and you're way over here. God's outside its creation, but loves you. That's the connection. Love is not a connection so much as an understanding that there's no separation in the first place. Learning to heal your heartache is a process of moving toward that love, so that fear is nothing more than the false evidence appearing real. If only, as I said, if only this were a decision that we could make and go, oh, well, far out, Michael, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, I've heard that from a lot of other teachers and read that in a bunch of books and some seminars I went to, so I got it. Well, good. But you got to keep getting it, because you go out into the world and deal with people every day that have no idea what we're talking about, and not the least amount of interest in this. Just, in fact, they're terrified by it. Most of our friends and neighbors are not only not interested in understanding themselves, they'd rather obsess on understanding and judging others. But they're terrified at the prospect, for fear that mom and dad will be right. You really are bad and wrong and defective, and nothing is more scary than ignorance. That's what ignorance is. So how does love drive out fear? It's the same way understanding drives out ignorance. That's what love and fear is. Fear is nothing but ignorance. Love is understanding. Understanding what? That there's only one of us here. That there is no other. That objects are an illusion. They're icons. They're graphic user interface. All the objects you see, your car, your coffee mug, your computer, what you think you see, what you perceive with your physical senses, you hear and taste and touch and smell, are like icons on the desktop. That little icon in the corner that says email, that's not really your email. That's just a symbol, a graphic user interface, a GUI is what they're called. It's a little icon that represents all these hundreds of lines of code and all the little diodes and transistors in the machine that are throwing switches back and forth, scores of switches just to create one letter or determine whether it's a capital letter or a small letter. I mean, we'd be paralyzed if we had to write machine code for a short little email message. So we create these icons on the desktop that represent what's actually going on. That's the world of objects. They're icons that we've evolved to perceive in a way that allows us to deal with the unimaginable complexity of reality. And that's what psychedelics do. Powerful psychedelics, they just blow open the filter that is the brain, and there's too much awareness. It's all too much. You're just blown away. And you can't handle it. You can't cope. Until the drug wears away and the filter returns, and now the brain focuses us into this physical reality. This is the level that the Saturday Salam is working on, by the way. It's a more advanced version, but the emotional intelligence, fearless intelligence, is my topic today, and that's what I want to focus on in this group. And I'd like to open it up to Q&A and some comments at this point. You can just use the reaction button in the bottom of the Zoom window to raise a hand, or send a chat message to Melinda. Say I have a comment or I have a question, or maybe pose that question briefly or that comment. And we'll go to that now. Either about this whole idea of emotional intelligence or something that came up for you in the meditation. I know for many of you, the meditation is your favorite part of the session. So let's not just limit ourselves to commenting on the instruction part, but how about your experience in the meditation? You want to comment on that or ask about that? Melinda, thank you.
Hi, Michael. That was a lot.
I'd like to give you a big bang for your buck. Oh, it's free. Wait a minute.
I'm sure someone will pop up a hand or a question. Um, your your talk about emotional intelligence and childhood experiences reminded me of you talked about someone calling you stupid and knowing that you weren't. Well, my trigger is when I feel I've been mean to someone. It goes way back to being told that about how I treated my older brother whenever he had trouble. I was directly told, if anything happens to him, it's your fault. And I slowly, it's revealing itself how that shows up in different forms through different people today.
You were accused of being mean to your older brother?
Right, like his maladaption was my fault. One time she came back from visiting him. This was when I was in my 30s, and she said he was troubled, and then she looked at me and said, if anything happens to him, you'll never see me again, which was just a continuation of she had her own reasons for wanting to cosset him and protect him. But I just remember being caught in that bind of trying my very best, and yet these accusations would pretty much come out of nowhere. And I know she wasn't able to look at her own inner self ever, which was a great tragedy in both my parents' lives.
Well, I think you just nailed it. So the reason she blamed you was,
Right, that's clear. Well, fairly clear. It's but I just this I've become aware. I didn't used to be, but I've become aware through really talking to you mostly, is how this feeling persists. It's just deep instilled within me, and it comes. People will just trigger it, and before I know it, I'm down the road having to say, "Oh, wait a minute, this is familiar. What is this?"
yeah, but before you go to that, understand your mother's motive. If she couldn't blame you, then who would be responsible for your brother's maladaptive behavior?
Yeah, the pain she felt was so immense with him.
She'd have to blame herself and her husband.
Yeah, and this was back in the 50s when you talk about there was not an understanding of these problems. I mean, he
So
had
she,
a he
so
had
she,
a he had a severe exercise eating disorder, which just went ununderstood and undiagnosed till he ended up in the hospital. But I mean, just even talking about it right now for you, I didn't realize it's like a whole door opens and everything streams out.
I'm just saying she blamed you to avoid
Yeah,
being responsible herself. So she projected. And then your point is, hey, we carry that, all of us carry that stuff throughout our lives. So 20, 30 years later, it gets triggered. It's important to remember, wait a minute, this is an echo from long ago that never got healed, never got fixed. In other words, was never really fully understood. We don't have the capacity as little children to understand this stuff. We don't have the vocabulary, much less the permission to express it verbally and think it through. It's repressed.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful. I'm seeing now. I guess what you talked about at the end of the talk, I guess the hope or believing that I don't need to go back and change what happened so much as knowing that through uh, the work we do, the meditation, the mindfulness, the recognizing it, that it will change by virtue of me sitting with it, I guess, and not running from it.
That's right. And
Because the
forgiving
tendency is to really, I'm out of here. I don't want to feel this.
and forgiving those who abused us or failed to nourish us.
Yeah,
That's letting go. Forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It's letting go of your pain.
yeah. I guess it's a gradual thing. It's definitely. I know I have more cognition of it to even just be able to describe it.
It's a lifelong process. It's again, as I've said a couple of times, if only it were a decision, like, oh, I get it, far out, okay, I can let that go. If it was, I wish it were that easy. It's very tenacious. It holds on, our pain. So it's sort of a process. You got to keep repeating it and reminding yourself, wait a minute, I'm not that lie. I'm not that story that I've been telling myself about myself.
It feels so real, though. Gosh,
Yeah, well, yeah.
it's so deep and it's so real. At your meditation about love, I just found it very powerful as an antidote to that, because emotionally now, right now, I that feels true. It's just there's something that rings very calming and true about it. I thought it was a wonderful meditation.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in or should we wrap it up? You see any hands, Mindy?
I don't think people are gobsmacked. Such a broad topic. It's my favorite. I just I've gotten so much out of sitting with you in the past couple of years. I can feel the change. I can feel the more self. Oh, I'll just say more at peace with myself. Because what else do I have? I'm 73. My health is kind of fading, but the one thing I can hold on to is I feel like this area is it's pluripotent like a stem cell, right? It can go anywhere. There's no limit to it.
I am often, speaking of being gobsmacked, I am often intrigued, big time, by our capacity for loving kindness, for caring, and happiness for no reason. That if we just breathe and relax and get quiet, there's a sense that everything's okay, even if you're not sure why you feel that way. No matter how miserable we become in our lives, in these detours that we take through misery, through hell, there's always an understanding that we have the capacity to care, to love. We're not just animals. In fact, I don't want to degrade animals. Animals have the capacity to love. It's very clear. It starts with dogs. A dog will do anything. There never was an animal that was more loyal than a dog. I think it's why dog people are generally not cat people, because cats are real aloof. You call a cat, they don't come usually. Some cats will sit on your lap. Some cats are completely disinterested, don't even want to be petted. But they're both wonderful animals, very popular. Uh, Doreen and I just watched a Robert Redford movie from about 20 years ago called The Horse Whisperer. And it's all about the love of horses. Of course, it's an allegory for a lot of things, for trust, for the parents' love of their daughter, the parents' love of each other, then this affair that this woman has with Robert Redford, which is certainly understandable, but it's all built around the love for the horse and the horse's love, and that element, that quality of love known as trust. Trusting the horse, helping the horse trust the trainer and the rider. It's a uh, beautiful film, very well made. And then I'm sure we've read stories or seen videos of the love that animals have for each other. The elephants, for example, have enormous brains and are self-aware. In other words, they recognize themselves in a mirror. Only 8 animals besides humans that do that. An elephant can look in a mirror and know that's me. A dog can't do that. A pig can't do that, and they're smarter than dogs. A bear can't do that. A bear looks in the mirror, thinks it's another bear. Elephant says, that's me. And when one of them dies, especially a young elephant dies, the whole herd mourns the death and hangs around the mother and is supportive. So it's not just human beings that have this capacity to love, which again, we're defining as awareness or consciousness. Awareness of what? Awareness that there is ultimately no other. There is no separation. Love is the unifying force. It's the ocean. You know, the fish may be separate, but the ocean is one. And as they say, there's that Ethiopian proverb, fish discover water last, because it's ubiquitous. What's a fish know about water? Well, what do we know about awareness? It's the same thing. We're not yet aware that we are awareness. This is what's so incredible about, I mean, you want a reason for optimism during very dark times. Humanity is standing on the verge of discovering that we're not our thoughts and our emotions and our behavior, these meat bodies. We are the awareness behind and above the thought. You can be more or less aware of your thinking, more or less aware of the meaning of your emotions, more or less aware of our behavior. Most of it we're completely unaware of. We just react and think about it later. We're not aware of awareness. We're not self-aware. We're asleep.
Rosemary has her hand up.
I just want to say before we go to Rosemary, don't let the right wing steal the meaning of woke. Woke is not a political agenda. Awakening is an ancient concept that has to do with recognizing that we are the awareness behind and above our, our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior, and our perception of the world. This is called the 5 aggregates in Buddhism: thinking, mental thinking, emotional feeling, physical behavior, health, performance, and 4 is perception of the world. To be aware of those 4, and then to be aware of awareness itself is 5. To be aware of awareness itself. To notice what you notice, and notice that you are deliberately noticing what you notice. This is mindfulness. And it's a breakthrough in psychology and consciousness. It's so deep and so profound that, forgive me if I sound redundant from time to time. Uh, Rosemary, go right ahead. Thank you.
Um, I just wanted to ask, is truth love?
Yes. Yes, without hesitation. In Theosophy, love, truth is hyphenated as one word.
Oh, is it?
Yes, love, truth.
Because
What
why
prompted you
do
to?
I?
Yeah, what prompted you to ask that?
Because I deal with truth as inevitable. It's part of my blood, yet it causes trouble when I express truth. Often, not a lot, but often, there's a barrier often when I express truth to people that I feel they don't want that. And obviously, that's pretty explicit, self-explicit, that a lot of people don't want truth. But if you're driven by truth, you can't change it. It's part of your lifeblood. So it creates problems at times. I can feel it. It's been over decades and decades. I'm really old now.
The
And
reason this, let me
it
interrupt you.
feels like a concrete barrier sometimes that's set
Yeah,
up rather than welcoming it.
yeah. Let me interrupt you because this is a sticky wicket, and I'll tell you why. I I touched on this briefly earlier today. There are two kinds of truth, just as there are, we could say, two kinds of love. There is an absolute love, which is capital L love, capital A awareness, the absolute in terms of ultimate divinity. But then there's the qualities of love like happiness and joy and fun and silly and content and these ineffable qualities of love we feel emotionally. Same thing with truth. There is the capital T absolute truth, but there are also relative subjective truths. The example I give in my Fearless Intelligence book is it's 65 degrees and you want a sweater and somebody next to you says, it's really warm. I'd like to take my shirt off. Why in the world would you want a sweater? And you said, well, because I'm chilly. And he says, yeah, well, I'm hot. So is one of them wrong? Well, of course not. It's just their experience of their truth is 65 is either chilly or actually it's quite nice. It's balmy and warm. Because the guy that's cold is from Hawaii and the guy who thinks 65 is balmy is from Alaska. That's the way I tell the story. But the absolute truth is it's 65 degrees, or if we used Celsius, it would, I don't know the number, but, or a Kelvin scale or some other scale. But there is an absolute truth in addition to the relative subjective truth. And sometimes, well, most of the time, the people that we encounter, people who represent the power that we're speaking truth to power, and they're threatened by that, they might say, well, that's not an absolute truth. That's not my truth. That's only your truth, Rose. And you say, well, yes, it's my truth, but it's also the absolute truth. And this is where it gets difficult. And The good news is we don't have to always verbalize it. We don't always have to speak truth to power. We don't always have to set people straight. I'll be the first to acknowledge sometimes we do need to stand up and say that's wrong. That's uncalled for. That's outrageous. That is detrimental. That hurts people. That is depraved, whatever. But often, if it's just a matter of your subjective relative truth and my idea of relative truth are different, so be it. And you just don't always have to verbalize it. That's the trick. And Rose, if you're going to pursue truth and you find power and grace and beauty in standing up for truth, then keep doing it. I think it's a virtue.
But what I have to say is that I don't expect other people to necessarily accept. I don't like the idea of my truth and her truth and everybody's truth, and look at the mess we're in now because we're following our beliefs, our truths to such an extent that we're fighting everyone everywhere, especially in the government. But I don't have a stake in somebody, swallowing my point of view, except in politics. But I really don't feel that they need to do that. I feel they need to just express what they think. Or if they disagree, then they disagree. Do you see the difference? I mean, if you're not expecting someone to swallow your truth, but you want to express it, but you're not expecting them to go with you, doesn't that let you out in some extent? Doesn't it cast you as an innocent in a sense?
Yeah, if you're able to be okay with disappointing people or even upsetting people or angering people, you don't have to, resist their anger. Say, well, I'm sorry that upsets you. It's just my feeling or my understanding of truth. And if that upsets you, Abadanza, so be it. I'm sorry you find that upsetting or difficult to deal with it. I hope you work through that. But there is subjective truth. I mean, how big is big? When does slow become fast? Is there such a thing as jumbo shrimp?
Yes, there is.
It's all relative. It's a matter of degree. In fact, much of what we think of as relative is, in the larger context, meaningless. We can think about, as long as we're on Earth, we can think about up and down, forward and back, left and right. Go into space, there is no upside down. There's no backwards. There's no forward. There's no north or south. You see? So it loses all of its relevance. There's no speed. You can't say how fast the spaceship is going except relative to another body. So to understand that, and I don't think many people do. If we took a poll, who knows what the two truth doctrine is? I don't think it's commonly understood, but it merits some reflection on our part, I think, to be, especially if you love that and are driven by that passion for truth. Damn it, I want to know the capital T truth of things. I insist on it. I'm driven by it. I have no choice.
Yeah, I think it's a great path.
I do too. And that's why I love your realization that love is truth. That's the absolute.
Well, I didn't think that, I didn't know until today. I heard you, and it suddenly became, after all these years,
yeah, good,
to be the same thing in
that's
a
right.
way.
That's
and
right.
Everybody doesn't have to think the same thing. No, that's not true. But you have to own what you do feel.
Yep.
What you're expressing in the way of your truth, if you want to call it that, or
Yep.
just the truth as you see it. And
Right.
other people need to be whole and need to accept that and need to not feel they've got to follow that path either. They make up their minds themselves. This is what I wanted to teach my children, that you don't have to feel resentment because you disagree with someone. You just have to feel pleased with yourself that you actually have an opinion, and that you live by it. I mean, that's enough in a way.
I think that's very well said.
Do you?
Yes.
Well,
I
I'm
really
glad,
do.
because
Yeah.
I'm a recovering individual who, at this point, cannot attend in the flesh. I've been through the hell. I've been through hell with this infection that came upon me. Has it made me any more enlightened or anything? No, it's made me terribly aware of how on the edge I was, considering that I could have died from this strep infection. Just wanted to reveal it to the class. Why not? It's my truth at the moment, and I've certainly seen how you have to be patient in life. I've certainly learned that lying in a hospital bed, absolutely unable to get up.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody gets a big dollop of
reality.
Yeah. Again, the very first principle, the first truth in Buddhism, life is suffering. A lot of people do not like that. That is not a place to begin. But in fact, many would argue, but in fact, that's exactly where you have to begin. How are you going to be free from it if you don't acknowledge the reality? This is hell. Hell is not another place. This is hell. Well, it's also heaven. And they're not destinations, they're states of consciousness or awareness. And they rise and they fall. And if today you're in paradise, tomorrow you'll be in hell. When you're in the midst of the grips of that horrible depression or sadness or fear of dying at any minute, whatever it is, loss, abandonment, just know paradise is around the corner. That no matter how stormy the weather, above the clouds, it's a sunny day. It's always a sunny day.
I like that optimism.
Yeah. Thank you, Rose. Okay, Melinda, thank you for co-hosting, and everyone else who is with us here today. I very much appreciate your presence. Again, we post these to YouTube usually within 24 hours. Search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. The podcast is edited. It's about a week to 10 days behind, but that's available on all podcast players and apps, podcatchers, and aggregators, and directories. Search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Like and subscribe on YouTube. That's real important. And also the book is available on Amazon or all booksellers. It's on every online bookseller, and even your local brick and mortar store can order it for you. Fearless Intelligence by yours truly, Michael Benner. Fearless Intelligence. Available in Kindle for just I think it's $5 or something, $4 if you want the ebook version. Thanks for being here. Unmute, please, and say thank you and goodbye to your friends, and Namaste, Aloha, and Salam.
Thank you, Michael.
Hope to see you next week.
Michael, take care.
Quite great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.